All right. We can get started here. We got the windswept plains in the background. I'm going to bring up, if you remember, we made a character named Angko-rra. Got to roll the R, that's important. She was a level 6 druid, Circle of the Land, meaning that she was more of the spellcasting focused druid. Hermit background, neutral good. A metallic gold dragonborn. There were a couple things that we hadn't filled in after the last broadcast. The first of that was here, and I put brackets around it to help highlight. I added her hermit mystery, or her discovery, as a background feature. Hermits don't get that very direct, well, here's ways that we can provide you food or shelter or equipment that the others grant. However, what the hermit does give you is that you have discovered something. A philosophy, a spell, a religious breakthrough, something along those lines, that you really need to work with your DM on fleshing out and working into the campaign. In the last campaign that I ran, I had someone with this background, and it ended up being... It wasn't the point around which the entire story revolved, but it was a major part of it that kept things moving along. And so it's a good way to provide at least one character, if he or she isn't some maybe charismatic or strong-willed force of the party, to continually move in that direction, because there was this prophecy that they had, or something along those lines. Oh, hi Calamity, welcome. Haha, thanks for popping in. So yes, to finish her up, we added her discovery as a hermit, what she did. And in this case, because she was rolled here to be a coastal druid, which is going to have an impact on her spells, she had a breakthrough of what lies beneath the waves. Is there actually a fiery heart of the world? So this is some kind of a, she's this gold dragon heritage. They breathe fire, and we can mix that. If she's growing up on the coast, then is there a place where these two opposing forces, this duality of fire and water, can coexist? And that is her driving force, because she had some kind of a vision, a spirit quest. Maybe she communed with an animal, or something happened where this was her big discovery in her background. As well, there was one outstanding language that she still needed to take, and Primordial, if your DM allows it, it's a fairly solid one, especially for a druid or someone attuned to the elements or nature, as Primordial is it's like a mother tongue in itself, but more to elementals or other similar beings, where you would have, there are specific Orin and Ignan, for example, are the air language and the fire language respectively. Primordial is kind of like the mother tongue of that, or it's the common version. So if we have a druid who is focused a bit on the elements, Primordial would make sense for her to have, and maybe that's something that she had picked up along the way. Everything else here, looks like we have to... Javelins are her favelins. Sling. I didn't purchase anything. You can do a lot with 5 gold, and I'm going to show you what you can do to outfit a character even on a budget of only 5 gold. Let's see. I believe that takes care of things here. Keep in mind her personality traits above. And I was referring back to these when I was going through her spells, which we'll get to as well. Young adult, 23 years old, 6 foot 6 inches tall. So she's a She's a tall one at almost 200 pounds. And this was a bit of a joke from from last night, that she has very big elbows. Must be part of her draconic heritage. So to truly finish her up, we needed to fill in the third page here because druids are considered to be a full spellcasting class. Even if you go with Circle of the Moon, which is the shape-shifting, you focus more on the shape-shifting aspect. For ease of access, I wrote in not just that you cast off of wisdom, but what your modifier is. In case you're on this sheet and your DM asks you for information, sometimes having that repeated doesn't hurt. Though I would imagine, especially by 6th level, you have that already in the front of your brain. As well, I also clarified that there are going to be 6 spells prepared that are these non-circle spells. Somewhat similar to a cleric having a domain that they serve, this kind of a druid receives circle spells based on the region that they are practicing in. In this case, it was coastal. Actually, here, I can show that off quickly here. Let's scroll down. Cleric and... Cleric and... Cleric and... There we go. For Circle of the Land here, you do get a bonus cantrip, and that was added in. That's why she has 4. Circle spells. I rolled a d8, got a 2, bada boom, here we go. So she receives, not counting against the 6 spells she knows, she received Mirror Image and Misty Step at 3rd level, Water Breathing, and Water Walk at 5th. And she'll go on to get Control Water, Freedom of Movement, Conjure Elemental, and Scrying. In their own ways, if you look at these spell lists, they are thematic, or supposed to be flavored for the place that she has grown up or where her circle practices. If you don't like these spells, I would suggest talking to your DM, and he or she will hopefully be able to negotiate something with you that is more in line with what's going on. All right. I gave her Druid Craft because that's an excellent, just a universal thing for all druids to have. You can produce a little flame. You could do you could make a flower bloom, things like that. Guidance, because guidance, especially for a hermit character, I mean, there's a mechanical benefit that you're aiding, you're giving a D4 to someone. But that could be used to help refine your own searches or other things like that. It felt appropriate. Shillelagh is an offensive spell. It allows you to make something, another type of weapon stronger. And to add a little bit of flavor for her 4th one, remember this was the bonus, druids have access to a spell called Thorn Whip, and that's exactly what it sounds like. It's an attack spell, so you get this vine with thorns on it, and it allows you to attack from a distance, even though it is a magical attack. And in this case, I wrote kelp because, hey, she grew up in a coastal area, so instead it's some kind of maybe a stinging seaweed. Same spell, same mechanics. We flavored it a little bit differently that's more appropriate for her region. Coming down, Animal Friendship, Cure Wounds, and Entangle. I was going for a mix of utility and combat. Remember that druids can choose from any spell that is on the druid list, similar to clerics and paladins for that matter. So she could wake up tomorrow and choose to receive way different spells. Though on any average day where she doesn't know what to expect... Oh, thank you, Osakachi. Welcome aboard. Oop. Let me get some music cycling over here. Okay, go back to the plains. We will revisit the Dwarven City another time. So yeah, if you don't know what to expect as a player, it doesn't hurt to keep a universal suite of spells that are available. Something that's a little bit of combat in case you get in a pinch, a lot of utility, things to help you out. So taking along a cure wounds doesn't hurt. Animal friendship, if you want that kind of companionship alongside you, or to learn some information. And it's not just limited to talking to landbound animals. If she's coastal, she's doing the Aquaman thing. She's talking to fish or other sea mammals or some seabirds who might have seen some wreckage floating somewhere. Okay, entangle is a good universal. You can use that in a lot of different ways. You can maybe catch food with it. You could run away from an encounter because you don't always have to slaughter your way through everything that you do. I indicated at the top here which spells were granted to us by our circle specifically. That way you knew that you have extra slots opened up. In this case, we have 6, and how many of those slots are taken. So Call Lightning, Dark Vision, Flaming Sphere, so we're at 3, and then we have our 3 level 1s. It's a good way to help keep things balanced out. Dark Vision is because Dragonborn do not receive Dark Vision normally. If you're underwater, light can quickly become a problem. Flaming Sphere was something that I felt she would be strong at wielding. She is a gold dragon after all. That is their element. It is something that can be used as an attack, and in its own way, if she's trying to understand the interaction of fire and water, this would be a good, more powerful spell to keep on hand. Misty Step is a good sort of short-range teleportation, and Mirror Image is it's just that it's a type of an illusion spell. And if any of you have questions on any of these spells, let me know and I can go into way more detail about them. Here's our circle, water breathing and water walk. That's self-evident. Especially for someone who breathes fire, it was interesting getting a spell that allows her to also breathe water, but more of the in than the out. And lastly, Call Lightning. It is a damage spell. It is also maybe a utility spell in the right circumstances, especially if this is going to be a campaign taking place on, under, or near the water. You can do a lot there. Hi, Bubonic One. Welcome. We are finishing up a druid that we began last night. I ended up having to take off before I was able to really flesh her out here. So I wanted to open up tonight's broadcast by bringing her up, reviewing things, and going over particularly her spell list. Though in going over Angko-rra here, it was important to fill in a couple other gaps that were left. And so we add one more to our cast of characters, which is growing. I've been saving the PDFs of all of these completed characters, and I will make them available as soon as I can. So for any of you who are watching and have come along these journeys, if you need inspiration of some kind, if you need, maybe you want to participate in a campaign yourself, and you remember, I remember that one night we were talking about this character, and I think he or she would be really great for this campaign that I've been invited to. Well, you can pull the character sheet off and adjust it however you want. There's already this concept behind it, a little bit of backstory, some cool fluff, and there we go. The only thing that was truly left to fill in here, and Bubonic, if you need me to scroll back and forth at all to get to know her a little bit more beyond what I've narrated, is her looks. So we have eyes, skin, and hair, and you can do, and also there was, if any of you just joined here, there was a joke from last night about her apparently having really big elbows. Well, this part might be easy because she is a gold dragon descended dragonborn. She has these golden lustrous scales. In fact, I was talking with someone that I is participating in my store's open, sort of like my D&D 101 that I run live at my shop, and he was playing a Dragonborn, and we were talking about different ways that you can work with what you have as a Dragonborn to give your character even a little bit more personality. Hi, Serodium. Welcome back. As you can see, your note about the elbows was still maintained. He was going to be playing a rogue character, and I was trying to find ways. He's a beginner player to really make him unique or shine, because we see the art in the book about Dragonborns, and they look cool in their own way. And I said, so what is going to make him unique? And I said, does he have anything like, scars, or heck, you could even give him tattoos of some kind? And he's like, oh, yeah, I like tattoos. And I said, all right, well, what kind of a tattoo? And he's thinking, oh, maybe it's my family tree or my family heritage going down from my shoulder. And I said, all right, I think that can work. It's showing that you're really dedicated. You're taking pride in who you are, and you're a part of this this descending line. And in fact, we can even say if you do something like shed your skin, I don't know, maybe in your world, Dragonborns shed their skin kind of like a snake, or maybe they just have scales that fall out and are replaced. So in that case, would a Dragonborn tattoo really be as permanent as it is on us, our smooth skins? And if not, it shows how dedicated you are, because here you are going back and trying and re-inking and preserving the markings of your family on your arm, despite the constant process of losing scales. And that was a really cool idea to him. He really was digging it. And it's just those little details that can help to make your character shine. And speaking of which, too, I said, I wouldn't even really mind if you said that, every morning you went out of your way, and maybe on your hand, maybe on the back of your hand, you took some time and some polish, and you really polished up your scales on the back of your hand, so you could almost use that like a little steel mirror, and you could like peek around corners with it or some other things. And it made sense. It was a fun little whatever. I'd offer some kind of equivalent or the same thing but different with other characters, to make something into an item or to help bring out their racial or their class qualities a little bit more. Pardon. So she has golden lustrous scales, hair. Dragonborns, if you go by the book, don't necessarily have hair. They have these kind of whiskers, or I don't know what you'd really want to call them. Here, I'll show you guys real quick. There we go. So like fronds or, boy, I guess like I'd say whiskers, but it's almost like catfish whiskers. But they're not really tentacles or anything. But anyway, they have these. Maybe they're even like spikes, right? That maybe they're just not rigid, but they get pulled back, or there's some kind of, not really a stinger, but some heritage of the past. Bubonic One, you've been helping folks set up their campaigns. Are you advising people at your local game store or your local circle of friends? Here, we'll give her long whiskers pulled back. You know what? She's gold. She is a coastal druid. Maybe, actually, why don't we describe her as this? Almost like lionfish whiskers. which are kind of golden, right? They swoop back and they can almost surround the face. And so maybe she wears them pulled back and even bound up in some kind of a ponytail, for lack of a better term. We'll make her eyes golden as well. Golden with... well, maybe not golden per se. Let's go with something... she breathes fire, so let's combine that. So what's like a really rich kind of an orange? Let's say something like amber eyes, right? Amber fiery eyes. It shows that flicker inside, that there's this mix of not just the yellow of the gold, but then there's these native flames that live inside her that maybe they aren't literally showing up in her eyes, but it's just, you look into them and there's intelligence and there's this primordial fire that burns within her. And so as she gazes down at you and she has those, beautiful, like, the black pupils set against this amber, which then are framed in a golden face, it really stands out in these layers coming towards you. Both on here and a local college group who are playing... Mage LARP, cool. Mind's Eye Theater is a lot of fun, and the fact they're doing Mage, I've only had experience with the vampire version, but that's really cool that you're doing that. So Bubonic One, with that said, if there's anything that I can help out too, tonight's broadcast is going to be, we're finishing part 1 of a 2-parter for the first set of the broadcast before going into break. And then after that, we're going to do some ways to give your character some flair, which we started here, but I'm going to reference a particular character. Though along the way, if there's anything, and it could be mage related, I don't mind talking mage. In fact, that's the game that we're switching to for my Mondays. While I normally don't broadcast, we just got to a break point in D&D 4th edition and are switching over to Mage the Awakening. So I do have some World of Darkness experience I could help out there. Obviously, I can talk all day, every day about 5th edition. Alright, so, I mean, this is something too, leaving these other squares blank that can give you some power to say, oh, well, I think her background would be more specific here. Was she given up by her parents? Was she adopted in some way? Is she born into a happy dragonborn community? Maybe for whatever reason these it's an island, right? If it's coastal, it doesn't mean that it has to be continental. Maybe this is an island nation of dragonborns of all kinds, and many of them practice, they go back to these primordial roots. Maybe they want to discover about not just what they breathe, but how they breathe it and why they breathe it. So it's some sort of maybe like a pilgrimage movement kind of a thing, or they want to live in isolation and take things in a different route instead of going for the arcane magical side that dragons are more often associated with. And once more, taking a peek at her spells. Remember, this is her I wake up and I don't know what to expect spell suite. A little bit of combat, lots of utility, and things that are thematic for someone who lives in that environment. Taking this character on an adventure, this spell sheet will change over time, and especially as you hit other locations, you're going to want to create and destroy water or something else if you're going into an arid region. So here's Angko-rra. Remember, we're rolling that R. Pardon me. Bubonic One says, I've never played in a LARP, but wanted to show him how to design better characters. Knowing the mechanics of the LARP can be important, but a character is a character is a character. They can be translated mechanically in a lot of different ways, but it's best if you're developing that heart with someone. This is who you are, whether it's a tabletop or a LARP. If you know who you are, you can make decisions through that filter. So that's a good way of approaching any kind of a roleplay situation. Arguably more so in a LARP because you're the character way more directly. You can always do things like, oh, all right, out of character, or whatever the signal is. Okay. All right. So this finishes her up. The next part here I'm going to get into is how to handle things like overland travel, narration, travel logs, random encounters, question mark. This came about from 2 nights ago, perhaps. One of you in the audience was talking about running. It was one of the D&D 5th edition campaigns. I don't think it was Curse of Strahd. It might have been Tomb of Annihilation. And there was this talk about going over the overland map, which was set up in hexes, and some of the hexes, as it was presented, had a guaranteed encounter of some kind, or it was like a trap. So you have the map out, and as your players are going across the map in that, not 30 feet at a time, but we're talking miles or days at a time, if they landed on a particular hex, something would happen. I don't know, they'd get attacked by raiders, or a natural trap, or something would occur. And it caused a little bit of talk back and forth. Pardon me, I'm going to get some water here. Pardon me. It caused a little bit of a conversation with those in chat about, does that really reflect overland travel, or does that stay in the spirit of the game? Is there a better way, or would you scrap it entirely? And everything has a place at some point in time. The module included that for its own reasons. Bubonic one, I'm going, was going to alt for their sick game master guy, so I've been watching them play and what they're looking for. That's really cool of you to do. Especially in LARPs, it's more difficult. I've found, this is anecdotal, to find people who are willing to run the game than people who want to play the game. So we were discussing ways that you could handle this kind of a thing, because in combat we're moving feet at a time. It's very micromanaged. Our battlefield is maybe a couple 100 feet on a side, and most of that, it's even two-dimensional. Now that your party is moving miles, dozens of miles a day, maybe even more, depending if they're mounted on an appropriate steed or they're employing magic, what could you do aside from saying, okay, you're leaving small village A and you're going to arrive in coastal city B that's 200 miles away? You can run it as a series of random encounters, and so nothing happens until something happens. There are charts in the DMG that can give you advice in how to do that. Some sort of pre-generated monster tables that you as a DM, because remember we're wearing our DM hats right now, that you as a DM can decide, okay, yeah, this makes sense. And so it becomes that anxious, oh, are we going to get attacked? Are we going to get attacked? Because you want your players to feel that anxiety. Or if you don't want to instill that as an emotion, maybe it's just a really combat-heavy group. That's what people really want. They want to swing swords, they want to cast spells, and that's fine in its own right. And so you don't want them to know what to expect, and so it is just a random generation table. The combats themselves don't necessarily serve a purpose beyond being combats and providing entertainment between the quick narration of, vast miles of road put behind you. You can give a straight up travel log as a DM, and go into the terrain. You can flesh out your map a lot more if you've only provided something very basic, like an MS Paint map, which I do that a lot. You can provide names for things, or you could describe animals and wildlife, or you could even say, oh yeah, there's a bandit camp that you stumbled across, but you were able to just get away based on your wits and skills. In fact, you might even be able to run and encounter by asking them, okay, you're being attacked. What is the one thing you're doing in order to get away from here? And then everyone's resourceful and says, okay, I'm going to cast this spell or do something. And you can kind of take the aggregate results of this one round of narration combat. Maybe there's not even dice rolling needed. And say, okay, woo, good thing you got out of there in time. Something that I prefer doing, and really what I wanted to have be the focus of this back half of the first segment, is to do something called a skill challenge. This was really fleshed out in D&D 4th edition, and I really like the concept, and it's something that I use in 5th edition often. Not too frequently, because it changes the scope of the game in a way that it's good for spice, but you shouldn't do it all the time unless your players have already consented to that. In a skill challenge, the basic premise is you need to accomplish X amount of successes before Y amount of failures. It's a good way to narrate things over time and to use your skills, not just your attack rolls and attack spells, in order to accomplish something. So, in other words, let's say you as the DM can sit down and noodle over, well, what's my arbitrary threshold? What's going to be my difficulty class for things? Or I'll give you another way to do this as well in just a second. And as well, you say, well, I need to make sure that I want to have 6 successes before 3 failures. So it's weighted that you should receive more successes, but you're going to punish failure harder because it should be easier to attain successes. And you can then go on to establish various rules by saying, all right, you can only use mental skills for this, or only physical skills, which is going to be a little bit difficult in 5e because, endurance officially isn't a thing. Endurance as a skill isn't a thing, and there's one strength-based skill. Though there's other ways. In 5th edition, you're not just limited to your... Actually, I'll bring it up here. You're not just limited to these skills here on your character sheet. Well, I mean, stuff like stealth would be technically, because it uses dex, right? Con, dex, and strength. You can run anything you want through an ability score. What is presented here are a good basic, like a core cluster of skills. Though there's nothing saying that you can't use strength to, tie a knot or whatever. Are you proficient? I don't know. That's between you and your DM. Maybe your background hints at it that you would be. But then you can say, oh, well, I'm going to tie a knot so that we can climb down the cliff. And your DM might call for maybe a sleight of hand based on dex, or even a sleight of hand based on strength. Or even in Xanathar's Guide to Everything, they indicate that rope tying is based off of intelligence, because you have to know the knots and you have to do it correctly from your knowledge there. Hey, welcome back, Ron. Yeah, or generic strength checks as well. You could just say, all right, yeah, you want to push the log out of the road? It's strength. So you come up with some kind of a success, X successes before Y failures, and you will set your DC at some point. You then go around the table and you ask everyone to narrate what they're doing. Not just saying, well, I'm going to attack, or I'm going to cast this spell, or even, I'm going to move the log out of the way. Okay, I get that. Though I would reward storytelling from the player's side with maybe advantage, or allowing for something different to take effect. or even this is a good way of also encouraging teamwork, is one skill can build off the next. If your bruiser character says, "Oh, I'm gonna roll the boulder out of the way of the mountain path," then that could end up aiding a smarter character who's set up some kind of a, I don't know, like a lever system, and once the boulder rolls off, it's going to apply leverage, and it's going to sort of pry the next one up out of the way. And so the success of this other one is enhanced by the first. And this is getting your players, because remember, we're DMs right now, this is getting your players to think creatively. Don't just look at your spell sheet, don't just look at your sword or your weapons or your armor. Maybe attacks are something that you allow, but think, how are you narrating doing this stuff? You could even go through and do a skill challenge for a battle. You could say, well, you're in the hills, and you know that there's hostile orc tribes around. In order to navigate these hills, you're going to have to get through somehow. I don't know how you're going to do it, but that's your job as PCs. And then they sit down and say, okay. So the thief's turn at the table, and he says, well, rogue, whatever. And he says, I'm going to roll stealth, and this is how I'm going to try and help the party, not just myself, get through these hills without being detected. And maybe then the rogue goes to describe how they're using rope or rags or spare clothes to tie down any metallic objects to keep them from clanking and clinking. Saddles can make a lot of noise too, as well as animals. And so the description itself may confer an advantage or a disadvantage. As well, this is getting the other characters at the table thinking, oh, okay, I see what's going on here. Well, if he's successful, and then I can build off of that, it'll be a little bit easier, and we're adding and adding and adding. And even if you get to the point where the stealth just, I don't know, they got below a 10, and below a 10 was your arbitrary threshold, your DC, for triggering an event, you can tell your PCs, all right, well, the orcs, you can hear the war drums of the orcs in the distance. It sounds like they're onto you and they're incoming. Do you want to try and flee? Do you want to set up a defense? What would you like to do? Okay, player, what would you like? And the player may say, oh, well, I'm just a wizard. I'm not too strong. I don't know if I'm too good at fleeing necessarily, but I'm smart. What can I do? And you can, as a DM, provide prompts. Otherwise, maybe she says, "Oh, well, I have proficiency in history. Is there a chance that I've read about something like this happening before and how the party was able to get away from the orcs?" Or if it's not just something in history that was brought up, you could roll a knowledge religion. Maybe, a saint of the past was in a similar circumstance. And so you need to recall back to those, the holy texts and books. Or using survival in order to try and cover up the tracks. Yeah, you were detected now, but could you be followed later? And so it's a chain reaction. You can narrate a combat even and say, yeah, the orcs are on your heels. We're in a chase sequence now, but we're still doing a skill challenge. Whether or not you accept attacks or spells as a part of that challenge is up to you. But there's plenty of ways to encourage creative storytelling based only on the skill set of the characters. Let me go here. I'm doing well. Ron Mernon, thank you for asking. I was outside and it got just above freezing today, so a lot of the snow that we got was starting to get kind of like wet and heavy and a little bit harder, but I was out there trying to move that. Bubonic One says, yes, ROLE versus ROLL. Very, very good point. And that is the eternal struggle. That is the yin and yang to these sorts of games. Ron says, so Maddie, I'm new to this creating a character for D&D Online. I'm used to creating one with a DM. I thought creating a character with a DM was mandatory. Not always. I would imagine that most DMs will at least want to see your character. Maybe perhaps just trusting you that you'll follow the guidelines on your own time and then submit it to him or her so that they know what are they looking at, what are they doing. A very good example was actually the character that we started last night, but we just buttoned up tonight because her background was hermit. Part of that feature, you get a discovery of some kind, and this is like an ancient secret, a spell, a religious breakthrough, a new philosophy, or some way to interact with the world. And that one really heavily, it if it doesn't explicitly say you need to talk to your DM about this, then it's really close to doing so, because it's something that should be worked into the storyline. So you don't always have to sit down and have your DM over your shoulder doing this. Many will probably be happy to do so, because it lets them know who are you and how can I weave you into the tapestry of the world. Bubonic One asks why, or I presume that it's flopped. Why is LARP so much harder to GM than pen and paper? It's more heads up. Things are happening more in real time in a LARP than you can just sit and say, well, we're a bunch of guys and girls sitting around a table, whatever you're eating, Thai food or, pizza or something. And you have a lot of in and out of character times. It's, you just a lot amount of time, and that you can fast forward things if you need to as a DM or even as players. It's more of a casual environment. With a LARP, you're there, you have a limited time, everyone else is there with a limited time, and you tend to need to get things done in an orderly fashion. So there's more pressure that you need to make these calls on the fly, you need to be able to mediate these events, and also offer substance to your characters in a LARP in a more timely fashion than having the luxury of sitting back and saying, oh, well, okay, let's consider this, or I'll tell you what, I'm gonna go get a drink and take a bathroom break while I'm in the Epiphany Chamber here. We'll pick back up, but just hold on. And then everyone else at the table is gonna sit around and say, okay, I'm here to have fun. And the expectation is a little bit more relaxed at a tabletop environment than you would find in a LARP. Oh, versus not because, okay. That's cold. Good to know. Yep. I'm happy to provide a little bit of insight to you there, Ron. Bubonic One says it's snowed here in upstate New York almost all day. Yeah, we're going to be getting a second round as well. So, you feel a little bit defeated that you plowed the first out of the way and more is going to come, but, you got to handle it. Get it out, or pre-salt things right now, or make a brine and put it down on your sidewalk so things will melt a little easier. Hi, Avelion. It was good to see you, by the way, the other day, and the other channel too. That was a lot of fun. But thank you for coming back. For those of you who are in the room just recently, we finished up last night's character here, Angko-rra, the druid. We went over the spell list. Here, I'll give you a quick little peek. And now we're discussing ways to get into extended time narration as a DM. We've put our DM caps on. How can we encourage players in a way that it's not just the standard, well, you're going through the wilderness and for whatever reason, I just have a chart of random encounters. Well, if your players really aren't combative, or you as a DM say, I really want to focus on the story, and they have hundreds of miles to travel, they're probably going to encounter something, but what does it add to the game to just say you encounter 1d3 dire wolves? Does that contribute something to your story? Is it necessary for what you're trying to present? And so the best way that I found in order to keep things fresh and to get your players active, involved, and paying attention, especially in that whole, well, you're traveling from town A to city B, over hundreds of miles, maybe it takes several weeks or months, is to have them tell the story to you. They're going to tell you how they're going to get to that point, and then you're going to listen to them and judge their actions based on a combination of dice rolls, based on skills, but you can modify that, and whatever the arbitrary DC that you're setting for these skills to be successful. And that way, your players have paid attention to everything that you've said and done the whole time. They've paid attention to everyone else who's there, and you've made it its own little fun mini game. And so they go through, and you measure, and you measure their successes. Have they hit your secret threshold? In this case, of 6 successes before 3 failures. If that happens, hey, you get to the city. There was a bump along the way, because maybe they hit a failure. But then you can finish that narration and get them to there with, yeah, you got that bruise on your shoulder from the one failure, but here's everything that happened, and maybe you can tailor bonuses at the end as some kind of a reward. Da, da, da. At least it's not eerie. Time skip. Yeah, you can time skip as well. That has a part in campaigns. If you're running and that's what your characters are expecting, hey, get into it. 12 feet of snow so far and 6 weeks left. My goodness. Evelian is offering 13th Age has a really cool mechanic where the GM points to a player and asks, what obstacle did the party encounter on this journey? Okay, yeah, so you're calling out a player, and the player then pretends to be the bad guy, or they're having to come up with something along the way. I do like that kind of involved storytelling, and make sure no one's snoozing at the table, or they're not just kind of going Oh, we passed by a village. Yeah, that's oh yeah, the village. It was Issa something. Oh yeah, that's yep, village, got it. Yep. Mm-hmm. Got it. Because you're involving them in the storytelling, and they are having to do things like generate their own obstacles, or even use that time to say, oh, well, if we're traveling, I've always wanted to continue cataloging the birds that I've seen around me. I don't know, it's a naturalist of some kind. Is it a druid? Maybe, maybe not. It could be just a wizard who likes doing that. And so it's part of the skill challenge. Because entertaining yourselves is a part of going from point A to point B. And so you say, oh, okay, wizard, well, make some appropriate roll. And then by the time they're done, you've helped them fulfill some side goal of theirs. And the story's a little bit more fleshed out. Okay, so Ron, your Barbarian Wizard character, that is going to be a segment in itself. And what I'm going to be doing is, behind the scenes, I'm going to construct this Barbarian Wizard one level at a time. And I'm going to use that Barbarian Wizard as a lesson in, pardon me, my it's kind of dry here with this, and my one contact is really kind of geeking out here. I'm going to use that as a lesson in how to multi-class and to show what happens one level at a time. Because I could present to you, I don't know, a level 10 Barbarian that is equal measure 5 levels of Barbarian, 5 levels of Wizard, and be done with it. But that makes for, I don't know, maybe not the best show. And especially with a cool challenge like making something so diametrically opposed as a Barbarian Wizard, I wanted to do things on a step-by-step level. So I haven't forgotten about it, and I will get to it here, most likely in this coming week. I'll make an announcement about it, but I want to make sure that I have the characters set and I have a roadmap describing what is happening at each level. That way we can get into multi-classes, because we haven't randomly generated one yet. And so this will be a new experience for those of you who've been aboard. Let's see. Has to be an obstacle, though, says Ivalon. Okay. And yeah, so yeah, I'm still with you there, Ron Mernon. We are going to be going over even another character that I was helping someone generate, and we're going to do that on the back half here. In fact, since we've talked about really what I wanted to do, we've finished the PC, and I've introduced this concept of a skill challenge to you all. If you have questions on that, feel free to answer that. I'm going to take a quick break, get up and stretch, see if I have an eye drop or something for this, because this is being buggy. I even have a humidifier going in the house, and we'll get back. We'll get back from there. So let's go into our short rest. Dun, 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 dun. I'll be hanging around in here for just a little bit after I come back to my seat from doing what I need to do. Let me get some appropriate music on. Here we go. So, get up, stretch, if you have a dog or a cat, give them a little scritch, maybe feed them some dinner. And when we come back, we're going to somewhat wear our DM caps. Maybe we'll alternate between DM and PC and go into ways that you can add some flair to a otherwise standard character.